Hello again. So for this video response, I'd like to kind of touch on the last or most recent reading we've done, which was, Gee, You Don't Seem Like an Indian from the Reservation. And I almost felt as if you saved the best for last because just even in our discussions, I noticed that it brought up a lot of different conversation and almost a bit more emotion from everybody. I think um, part of this was because of the way it started off, because not a lot of the readings were so like blunt and blatant with what they were saying. And in this reading, it was basically like, yes, I grew up not liking white people because my family didn't like white people and stored those thoughts into my mind. And then she was surrounded by ignorance and violence from the whites to her people. So why would you like white people? But that's actually not the focus of what I'd like to talk about, but I did think that was a very intriguing way to start the reading, and it really drew you in, and I think there could be a lot of conversation on that part too. But what I'd like to talk about, I actually mentioned it in my post, but one quote that really stuck out to me, read, "Racism among third world people is an area that needs to be discussed and dealt with honestly. We form alliances loosely based on the fact that we have a common oppressor, yet we do not have a commitment to talk about our own fears and misconceptions about each other." Now, I was kind of astonished because when this writing started, it was like, oh, here's another writing where, don't get me wrong, I enjoy reading them, but where it's like, we don't like the whites because of this. But in this, it was kind of like, whites aren't the only race that we discriminate against or have stereotypes against, and it's third world people against third world people. You never really hear much about that, but it is true. It's out there. There is racism of third world people against other third world people. It's not just all third world people against the whites. And I couldn't help but think of a specific movie when I was reading this, and that movie was Freedom Writers. And in Freedom Writers, the teacher is white, and all the students don't show any respect for her because they have all these stereotypes against white people. And I remember she had a pearl necklace, and they just were like, oh, she's just this ritzy white lady. But actually, they weren't just discriminatory towards the whites, but if you noticed in the film, or if you haven't seen the film, all of the students kind of group off by their race. You have Asians, Latinos, African Americans. I think there was only one white student. Um, Everyone was grouped off based on their race, and they didn't form relationships with others outside of their race. It was almost, I don't want to say gang. Some of them were actually in gangs based affiliated with their race, but moral of the story is they all grouped off according to their race, and they not only had stereotypes against the whites, but they had stereotypes against all the other races. The Latinos wouldn't talk to the Asians wouldn't talk to African Americans wouldn't talk to whites. They all wouldn't talk to each other. They only talked in their racial groups. And I think it's important because I don't think a lot of people actually discuss this problem because it's not as prominent of an issue, and you don't hear people talking about it as often, so it's kind of uncomfortable, especially for people like me, I guess, that are white. You don't want to bring up, oh, well, you're racist against, if I'm speaking to an African American, oh, well, you're also racist against Asians. You have stereotypes against them too, because we're already, I feel like, on this level of disrespect. And so I feel like a lot of white people don't want to bring up these topics. But also you don't notice a lot of people of color bringing up these topics either. So I was very intrigued that this issue was brought up. And I think it's a positive thing because, yes, there's definitely stuff that goes on with whites and other races. But there's also things that go on outside of just the white world. And I think that it's an extremely prevalent issue that needs to be discussed, and I'm glad it was discussed in this piece of writing, and I think it's awesome that it could be related back to a movie that I watched growing up and loved, because I never really thought about that. I think when you're watching the movie, you think more of, oh, they don't like the white teacher, but really, It was also about forming relationships with other students and forming relationships with other races outside of your own, not just the whites. Thank you.